Hey awesome people, welcome to another episode of Sew Addicts. Today's episode, I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make your favorite spring dress. Now, you already guessed it, you know, if you know, you know, I already have a summer dress tutorial up on my channel a couple of months ago. So if you want to check that out, you know, give yourself a head start to the summer, that would be super perfect. It is different from my spring dress, I promise you. You're just gonna have to wait to find out. But the reason for the spring dress, of course, it's getting way nicer outside. It's not fall and cold anymore and just like and snowy. It's getting a little bit more sunny and we have more warmth. So I decided to make this awesome and just super beautiful spring dress tutorial for you guys so you could all look amazing during the spring and probably look even more amazing after looking at my summer video as well. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. The pattern I used for this tutorial is the V9296 Vogue pattern, which is this. And I actually did the C pattern, but with this tutorial you could definitely do the A and B patterns as well. It kind of shows you everything. So again, I attach all the patterns and all the materials I use for this video down below, so make sure to scroll down and pick your pattern and fabrics and all that stuff. This was such an exciting video for me to shoot just because I was able to play with prints, and I love prints, and prints are just super freaking amazing. I think they would look really good with this pattern, especially because it's spring. You know, you just want to look amazing. You know, you're just like a ball or ray of sunshine. I don't know. So I really hope you guys enjoy this tutorial. If this is your first time on this channel, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you love what you see so far, and if you do, please hit down that red subscribe button so you can see more awesome videos from me. And let's just get started with the tutorial. So diving into the materials for this project, I got 6 yards of my fabric and a 22-inch zipper to match. So now we're gonna go right into our pattern. So the first pattern is this number 2 front pattern, and this pattern actually comes in 3 different cup sizes. I cut out the B cup. In order for you to find out what cup size to cut, you want to measure the size of your bust and the size of your high bust and subtract these measurements together and follow this table. So when you find out what measurements to cut out, now we're just gonna trace out all the circles around this pattern. So you want to trace out that circle and this circle. So I'm just doing that with my invisible pen, making sure that I'm tracing out the right circle for the right pattern that I cut out. So whatever size you cut out is the circle size you want to trace out. So I'm tracing that circle and that circle at the top, and you also want to trace out the circle at the side of this pattern, and we're also going to trace out the darts on the pattern as well. Do not forget to also mark your notches when cutting out this pattern. So after dealing with the front pattern, you also have your back pattern number 5. You also want to make sure to cut this out on 2, and also your front on 2 as well. Now we also have pattern number 8, which is our neck facing. You want to make sure to cut this out on bias and 1 piece. We also have number 9, which is our sleeve. You want to make sure to cut this out 2 piece and also trace out the circles on your pattern. We have pattern number 11, which is our armhole facing, and you want to make sure to trace out all the marks and cut this out in 2. Our next pattern is pattern number 6, which is the skirt front pattern, and you also want to cut this out in 2 as well. Last but not the least is our number 7 back skirt pattern, which you also want to make sure to trace out the circle as well. So now beginning the sewing process, you want to grab your 2 front patterns, and we're just going to sew up the darts. So I already have my darts traced out here already, but it's not really visible for you guys to see. So you just want to make sure to pin your darts really nice and flat, and you're just going to run that on the sewing machine. So after sewing your darts on the sewing machine, you want to make sure to press this down facing downwards and also facing your center front. Now we're going to sew these 2 pieces together. So you want to make sure to sew from the top to that point right there, and also from the point at the bottom all the way down. So the idea is to leave this middle seam or this middle part open. So now we're just going to run this on the sewing machine. So when you're done, it should look something like this with the middle part open. So the next thing we're going to do now is to basically top stitch this middle section. So you want to reinforce this middle section so it doesn't come apart. So I'm just going to top stitch this at about a 1/4 inch distance from my edge. So after doing this, yours should look something like this. So as you can see, I ran like a rectangle stitch all around that point. And now that I don't have a lining, I'm just going right ahead and using my pinking shears to cut down my seam allowance, making sure that my edges are nicely trimmed and does not fray. So after doing the front, now we're also going to do the same process for the back as well. You want to make sure to sew your back darts down nice and neat and press them towards the center back. So after sewing my back down, now we're just going to go right ahead and sew our front and back pieces together. So now I'm just going to go place in my front piece right sides to right sides, and we're just going to attach this at the shoulders for our front and back, and we're also going to attach this at the side seams as well. So after attaching at the side seams, yours should look something like this. Nicely pressed, and I even went ahead and trimmed down my seams with my pinking shears. So the next phase is to grab our skirt front pattern. Now we're just going to go right ahead and actually sew down our skirt front pattern, attaching these two pieces together at the center front. So you want to place right sides matching right sides, and you just want to sew all the way from the top of your center front to the bottom of your center front. So after sewing this down, you want to also make sure to press your seams nice and flat. Also feel free to trim the seam if you would like. Now we're just going to move right into the back, and the back is pretty much the same thing, except we're just going to sew from that circle we traced earlier on our pattern. Your circle should be around this point, and we're just going to sew from that circle all the way down to the bottom. Now this is leaving an opening for our zipper. Now the next thing is to attach your back skirt to your front skirt, and of course we're just going to put right sides to right sides and sew this down at our side seams. So now we are at the stage of attaching our skirt to the bodice. So this is pretty much just a simple way of putting the bodice to the skirt, which is going to make sure to match all our seams together. So that center front seam should be matching the center front seam of the skirt, just like this, and all the side seams should be matching as well. So you just want to slowly walk this around, making sure to attach all the seams nice and neat. So you're going to sew this at about a 5/8 of an inch, which is the seam allowance. So after sewing this on the sewing machine, I also actually went ahead and made another stitch just about a 1/4 of an inch away from that original stitch, just to reinforce this waist part. And of course, the next thing I went ahead and did was to take my pinking shears and just trim down this excess seam allowance and give it a nice finish. So after this section, now we're just going to move right into putting in our zipper. So I went ahead and actually pressed in my seam allowance right at the zipper point, which should be about 5/8 of an inch. So I went ahead and pressed this down, and now we're just going to go right ahead and attach the zipper. So you want to put one side of the zipper on one side of your dress, making sure to put the edge of the zipper at the edge of the dress and pinning this down nice and neat. This is going to be your guideline for putting your zipper in. So I'm just going ahead and pinning this on the other side of my dress as well. So I went ahead and actually sewed this down, and your zipper should be nice and flat. So after putting in the zipper, now we're going to move on to pattern 8. So you just want to fold pattern 8 neatly in half. So after folding pattern 8, this is what we're going to use to finish up the neckline. So I'm folding pattern 8 in half to find the middle, and I'm putting this at my center front. So I'm just pinning this right at my center front, as you guys can see, pinning it from edge to edge, following my notches. Do not forget to also follow your notches. And I'm pinning this from edge to edge, making sure that the fold is facing the bottom and the raw seams are matching together. Now when you do this, you should have this excess flap at this point going over or spilling over on both sides of your neckline. So I'm just pinning this all around my neckline, and I'm just going to sew this at a 5/8 of an inch. So after sewing this down, yours should look something like this. The next thing we're going to do is to trim down the excess fabric at the seam allowance. You want to make sure to trim this down as low as you possibly can. After trimming this down, you also want to make sure to press this really nice and neat. So now we're just going to go right ahead and flip that extra seam allowance towards the facing part, and then we're just going to understitch down nice and neat. So I'm pushing that extra seam allowance all the way towards my facing part, and I'm just going to understitch this down nice and neat on the sewing machine. Now after sewing this down, we're just going to push all that fullness literally all the way in. So we're just going to go right ahead and actually top stitch this with our sewing machine, catching the facing from the front. So in order to take care of this extra fabric towards the end, you just want to make sure to push this in while you actually top stitch your facing from the front. So again, I went ahead and actually pinned this down just to give me some kind of guideline, and I'm just going to top stitch this, as you guys can see, going slowly or fast depending on you, but you just want to top stitch this at about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge, and you just want to run this throughout your neckline. So when you're done, yours should look something like this, with basically 2 stitches at the back and 1 stitch at the right side of your fabric. So the next part of the sewing process is to grab our pattern number 9, which is our sleeve. So you want to make sure to attach your sleeve side seams to side seams for both pattern pieces. And after doing this, we're just going to go right ahead and actually hem the bottom of our sleeve. Now to hem the bottom of our sleeve, we're going to run a long basting stitch about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of our fabric. So as you guys can see, I already did this here, and now I'm just going to go right ahead and fold up my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're just going to go ahead and press this neatly on the iron. So you want to go ahead and press up 5/8 of an inch on the bottom of your hem, making sure that everything is laying nice and flat, and we're just going to go right ahead and press this with the iron. Now after pressing this is going to make it way easier for us to just top stitch this with the sewing machine. So now I'm just going to fold over 1/4 of an inch, as you guys can see, and I'm just going to be top stitching that on the sewing machine. So you want to pretty much do this all around your hem. After top stitching, your sleeve should look something like this, nice and ready. So after this, we're gonna go right into putting our sleeve into our dress. So you just wanna make sure to turn your dress inside out. So now we're just gonna grab one of the armholes to put in our sleeve. So I already traced out the circle from my pattern on my armhole piece, as you guys can see, and now we're just gonna put our sleeves in. Now you wanna make sure to match the notch from your sleeve, as you guys can see, to the notch of your armhole as well, making sure that right sides match right sides. So I'm making sure that the notches match up, and this is going to be towards the back, and we're just going to sew this down nice and neat. You want to make sure again that your dress is indeed turned inside out, but you don't want to turn your sleeve. Just make sure to place them side seams to side seams. Now we're just going to sew from that circle that I marked earlier all the way to the circle that I marked also on the other side. You want to sew this at 5/8 of an inch from that circle all the way to this circle. So after sewing this on the sewing machine, yours should look something like this, with the edges not attached together. So make sure to actually check this section, make sure that everything is laying nice and flat so you could proceed to actually facing the armhole. So in processing the armhole facing, you want to grab pattern number 11. So this is cut on bias, and I'm just going ahead and showing you guys all the pattern holes that you pretty much have to trace. So I'm tracing all these circles, making sure that I have them, and you also want to trace these squares around here depending on the size of pattern that you cut out. I'm tracing 14 because I cut out 14, and after tracing this, you want to make sure to repeat them for the other pattern as well. And when you have all this down, this is going to be easy to face our armhole. So now that you have one of the pieces, we're just going to go right ahead and stitch this down together at the sides. So after stitching this down together, you should press that really nice and neat, and we're just going to fold this over just like we did for the neck facing. So after folding this over, you also want to make sure to press this down nice and neat. So after pressing this down, this is what we're going to basically use to face our armhole. So on the piece that we traced out, remember the circles that I traced out before? You want to make sure to place one of those circles at the top of your shoulder, and the other circle should be towards the front of your side seams. So I'm walking this facing in now, and I have the circle pinned towards my shoulder and the other circle towards the seam where my sleeve meets my armhole. So you also want to make sure to press that seam towards the sleeve section. So I'm just walking this facing all around my armhole. So we're pretty much just gonna treat this facing just like we did for the neckline, sewing at 5/8 of an inch, trimming that down, and edge stitching it and top stitching it as well. After treating it like you're facing like we did for the neckline, yours should look exactly like this. 2 stitches at the back and 1 stitch in the front, just like we did for the neckline. So at this point, we're just gonna go right ahead and finish our hem. So I already actually folded my hem, which is 5/8 of an inch. I folded this up and pressed this on the sewing machine. So we're basically just gonna treat this hem just like we did for the sleeve. Basically the same process. We're just gonna fold that 1/4 of an inch over just like we did for the sleeve and top stitch this all around our hemline. So I'm just going right ahead now and actually folding the 1/4 of an inch over, so I'm giving myself some sort of guideline. And of course you can use pins, making sure that I'm able to sew this 1/4 of an inch down nice and neat. So after sewing this down, that is pretty much the end of your spring dress, and it's ready to wear. So that was pretty much the end of this tutorial. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. And yes, it is spring, so pick as many fabrics as you want, colorful prints, anything, so you can just be this ray of sunshine walking down the streets. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It was super fun and super easy for me to make and show you guys. And if you do make this dress or any of my other tutorials, please tag me in any of your photos at DamiaDNIKX on Instagram, so you could be featured on the Sew Addict Spotlight on this channel and also on my Instagram and YouTube, Instagram. Yeah, so you're gonna be featured on both my channels. If you do make this dress or any of my other videos, just make sure to tag me. And if you love this video, please give this video a big thumbs up, because it's spring, it's exciting, it's happy, and we're going into the summer soon, and I'm super excited, as you can tell. And if you have any questions, suggestions about any of the patterns or my materials I use for this video, make sure to scroll down and leave me a couple of words and suggestions. I'm definitely reading those as well. If you haven't hit the subscribe button already, make sure to also hit the subscribe button so you can see more awesome videos from me. I really appreciate you guys being on my channel today, and I hope to catch you awesome Sew Addicts next week.